In 1946, the US Truman administration secretly offered Denmark $100 million in solid gold bars to purchase Greenland. The Danes said no. In 2019 and 2025, the Trump administration revived this exact demand. The media allowed, treating it like a bizarre real estate joke. But geopolitics doesn't tell jokes. Greenland is not just a giant block of melting ice, it is an unsinkable aircraft carrier sitting directly on the polar approaches to North America. As climate change melts the Arctic ice sheet, previously impassable maritime routes are opening up, exposing a $1 trillion treasure trove of critical minerals beneath the forest. Today, we break down why the United States, Russia, and China are locked in a silent, high-stakes war over island of 56,000 people, and how Greenland holds the absolute key to the future of global power. Introduction: the Doctrine of Strategic Denial. For a long time, the Arctic was a peaceful zone of scientific cooperation, but between 2024 and 2026, the post-Cold War security architecture completely fractured. The premier governing body of the High North, the Arctic Council, collapsed into political gridlock, following the suspension of diplomatic ties with Russia. This institutional paralysis occurs just as Greenland enters a massive geopolitical crisis. Today, the US strategy is no longer about brute territorial annexation. It has evolved into a sophisticated doctrine known as strategic denial. The goal is simple: ensure that adversarial powers cannot establish a physical or infrastructure foothold on the island. Think of it as the Okinawa-fication of Greenland. The United States allows the Danish flag to fly over the territory, but demands deep, sovereign-level military and resource control behind closed doors, because whoever dominates Greenland dominates the Arctic. Chapter 1: the Northern Shield and the GIUK Gap. To understand the military stakes, we have to look at the shortest path for missile or bomber, traveling from Russia or China to North America. It goes directly over the North Pole. Greenland is America's northern shield. At the absolute center of this shield is Pituffik Space Base, the US Department of Defense's northernmost installation. Pituffik anchors the upgraded early warning radar system between 2024 and 2026. Its value skyrocketed due to the massive US Golden Dome for America initiative, backed by tens of billions of dollars in federal funding. This program modernized the homeland defense chain to track next-generation threats, including hypersonic glide vehicles and maneuvering cruise missiles. Pituffik turned from a passive detection outpost into an active, multi-layered tracking node. But the threat isn't just in the sky, it's under the water. Greenland forms the western pillar of the GIUK Gap, the maritime corridor between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, for Russia's powerful northern fleet. This gap is the only exit from the Arctic Ocean into the Atlantic. If Russian nuclear submarines pass undetected through this choke point, they can position themselves right off the US east coast, destroying NATO's second strike deterrence. To counter this, Russia has launched a quiet wave of cognitive warfare, attempting to destabilize NATO from within by founding local independence movements in Scotland and Greenland. In direct response to this threat, NATO officially launched the Arctic Sentry mission in February 2026, the alliance's first standing coordinated Arctic defense operation. Under this mission, Denmark has deployed F-35 fighter jets, Britain has doubled its troops in Norway, and Sweden has sent fighter jets to secure Greenland's perimeter. Complacency in the High North is officially dead. Chapter 2: the critical mineral monopoly. While the military guards the ice, an entirely separate war is being fought over what lies beneath it. The global clean energy transition relies on permanent magnets used in electric vehicles, wind turbines, and advanced defense systems, and those magnets require rare earth elements. Right now, the People's Republic of China holds a near total monopoly of this entire industry, controlling 60% of the mining and a staggering 91% of the refining capacity. When Beijing weaponized this monopoly by slapping export controls on critical minerals, Western supply chains panicked. Greenland is the only place on Earth that can break this stranglehold. The island holds an estimated 1.5 million metric tons of rare earth reserves and harbors 25 of the 34 minerals designated as highly critical by the US and the EU. The corporate battlefield over this wealth boiled down to two massive deposits. Kvanefjeld. This deposit is incredibly rich, but it's mixed with radioactive uranium. And Ten Breeze. Located in the south, this 4.7 billion ton mega deposit contains zero radioactive uranium, meaning it bypasses all environmental bans. It is incredibly rich into heavy rare earths the West desperately needs. Chapter 3. The Polar Silk Road versus Russia's Bastion. China and Russia are not giving up easily. In 2018, Beijing controversially declared itself a near-Arctic state, laying groundwork for its Polar Silk Road. China's strategy in Greenland mirrored its moves in Africa, offering to build international airports and buy abandoned naval bases. The Pentagon blocked these attempts by pressuring the Danish government to co-finance the infrastructure themselves, leaving Chinese predatory capital locked out. Russia, however, is a legitimate Arctic nation and is playing a much more aggressive hand. Since 2008, Moscow has reactivated over 50 Soviet-era military bases and modernized its northern fleet. Russia operates a Bastion defense strategy out of high-tech polar bases, like the Arctic Shamrock. These strongholds are heavily armed with S-400 anti-air missiles, coastal anti-ship systems and hypersonic Kinzhal missiles. Simultaneously, the Arctic has become Russia's primary economic lifeline to bypass Western sanctions over the Ukraine war. Russia has weaponized the Northern Sea route using a rogue shadow fleet of ice-class carriers to transport LNG directly through the polar ice to Asian markets, fully protected by the Russia Navy. Chapter 4. The Independence Trap. Finally, we have to look at Greenland's internal politics, because the island is locked in a deeply emotional struggle with its colonial history. Greenland is currently a semi-autonomous territory under the Kingdom of Denmark. GIUK controls its local resources, but Copenhagen dictates foreign affairs and defense. A massive 67.7% of Greenlandic adults want full independence, but here is the catch. Greenland's economy is structurally dependent on an annual 700 million block grant from Denmark, which funds well over half of the island's total government budget. If Greenland declares independence tomorrow, it immediately goes bankrupt. The only way to replace that Danish money is by aggressively mining the island's rare earths and drilling for its estimated 17.5 billion barrels of offshore oil. This exact fault line triggered a political earthquake during the March 2025 general election. The environmentalist left-wing government, which had banned uranium mining and halted oil exploration, was soundly defeated. A center-right, fiercely nationalist coalition surged into power on a platform of rapid resource exploitation to found a fast track to absolute sovereignty. This introduced a terrifying new geopolitical risk matrix for the West. If an independent Greenland aggressively pursues separation from Denmark, it will strip away its security umbrella. A cash-strapped, newly independent nation would become highly vulnerable to Chinese debt-trap diplomacy. Beijing could easily buy up Greenland's sovereign debt or inject predatory capital into its mines, gaining total political compliance, neutralizing NATO's northern defenses without ever firing a bullet. Therefore, behind the scenes, the US and NATO are quietly working against immediately Greenlandic independence, pushing instead for a model of free association that keeps the island firmly under the Western defense umbrella. In conclusion, the ultimate sacrifice zone. As we move through 2026, Greenland has officially ceased to be a peripheral territory of ice and science. It is the active, contested frontline of a multidimensional struggle for global hegemony. The race for the High North will not be won with tanks, but through the lethal application of economic capital, mining licenses, and radar waves. The West has successfully deployed strategic denial to shut China out of the Kwanfield project and funded the acquisition of Tanbreeze to ensure its high-tech defense decoupling. But the delicate diplomatic task ahead is immense. The US and NATO must find a way to accommodate local desire for self-determination and economic growth by ensuring that the resulting political vulnerabilities are not immediately exploited by the predatory capital of Beijing or the militarized coercion of Moscow. Formal territorial occupation is an obsolete concept of the past. The future of the Arctic belongs to the power that can master strategic denial without fracturing the fragile political and environmental landscape of the High North. What do you think? Does Greenland have the right to absolute independence, even if it's a risk opening the door to the Chinese control? Let me know in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching.